What I want to talk about today, as we get started on this task, is how the power of language is already very evident in our society, and how, even though we tend to think of language as a barrier, we also recognize in many areas of research that it's a strength. To me, as an academic, one of the greatest strengths that I have recently discovered is that multilingual groups of researchers produce papers that are more widely cited than groups that are not multilingual. And you might say, gee, how'd that happen? You think, oh, maybe it's because they're smarter because they're multilingual. Well, actually, they become smarter. Because they are multilingual, they bring different perspectives. And the people who talk about why these groups are working for them talk about the fact that they can't take anything for granted. They have to explain everything, all of their assumptions. And so rather than have a group of people who share your assumptions and you just start with the basics and move on from there, you actually have to stop and think about each step. And in doing so, you produce more quality work, more well thought through work, more original work, and it doesn't matter what the surnames are. They checked. It's not a surname issue, it's a language issue. So in that respect, I hope that among the things that happen today, we will try to check each other's assumptions, because we have been working in this area, most of us, for quite a long time. And we probably have some expectations, and this is why, in fact, I invited Ariel, because I think a breath of fresh air, a new voice, a set of recent experiences will help us to think about these things in a new way and hopefully open up new paths. Another place where we know that we have strength, of course, is that this being the Aloha State, we recognize that we have the capacity to reach out to others, and often that is in language. There's a story over there, many of you may have read it, about the last finisher of the Honolulu Marathon, who was an elderly woman from Japan. And she was just trudging along late in the evening, and along came somebody who saw her and stopped and realized that she was a runner, went home and changed clothes, came back, somebody else had already joined her, but that person didn't speak Japanese. But he did, a little bit, about as much as you would learn from your college classes, maybe what you recall. And so he kept her company and chatted with her, and the next thing they knew, somebody else joined, a few more Japanese speakers, and by the end they had a nice handful of people who helped her cross the finish line, but not just in silence, but actually supportive communication. So the support we can see, but the language support makes it all the more meaningful. The power of language was also evident on Sunday in the front page, or it wasn't front page, I believe it was the front page of the local section, where the newspaper reported that those who exit our bilingual programs, our English language learner programs by high school, outperform the students who came into the school with English. So what we can see again is that those who have been motivated enough to become part of the society, to find their way through the academic culture, to succeed and move forward, they are our superstars. We should be looking for them. They're gold right within our midst, and we want to make sure that we recognize their talents, not just for their English, but also for the language that they were brought up in. So the strengths that we have in our community are not small. At the same time, as Ariel mentioned, we have many people who come who haven't had an opportunity to learn English yet. I remember hearing Josie Howard speak a number of years ago about how every time she left the house when she first arrived, she would get lost. And I thought, how can that be? She says, well, I couldn't see the ocean, and I was used to seeing the ocean, so that was my guide point. Well, I recalled, as I was thinking about sharing remarks today, that I had been to Japan many years ago and walked out of the hotel and without thinking just started walking down the street and realized about 5 minutes out that if I didn't turn around, I was going to get lost because I couldn't read any of the signs. And I began to realize just how important it is not just to be bilingual, but to be biliterate. Because on that same trip, sorry, not on that same trip, on a different trip with my husband, but several years later when I actually had studied Japanese, we were driving and we went past, it was a country road, we went past a handwritten sign And I stopped, I said, sweetie, could you back up? I think that said the bridge is out several miles down the road. Well, it was about 60 miles down the road, and had we not been able to read the handwritten sign, we would have gone out of our way for an hour and gone out of our way back an hour. It was nice to be biliterate. So I just want to point out again that English as a second language, English language learners, they have two tasks. One is, of course, to learn to speak and understand, and the other is to be able to read and write. Which brings us to the task for today. We have dreams that we can have a state, a community, because I don't see ourselves as a state. I see ourselves as one very large multi-island community where people can speak the language that they choose to speak and be understood by others who share that language. Several years ago, in talking to Debbie Tulang de Silva about what our wildest dreams might be, she had the idea that it would be great if stores could put a sign in their window that says, "We olelo here." That you could come in and whatever language you needed, somebody would be there to help you. That's actually a goal I think that we all have, understanding that if we could just learn that many languages, we would. Which takes me to one point I wanted to share today. Everybody here knows the word talofa in Samoan, right? So how do you double your vocabulary in another language? Fa'afetai, which is thank you. And in so saying, you've just doubled your vocabulary in Samoan. So tomorrow you learn 2 more, and you'll double it again. And the idea of just simply trying little by little, day by day, bit by bit, giving you those opportunities to increase your capacity to communicate with people who speak a language you were not raised with. This is part of what I think we need to be thinking about. It's not about mastery. It's not about correctness. It's about using the language every day. And what the roadmap actually does when it talks to people about using language, we talk about language in the workplace. Language in the workplace is not the same as language going on a trip or language talking to your neighbor. Language in the workplace is language that you need to get your job done. So that's what we want to talk about today. How to get the job done. How to make sure that people can work in their workplace safely and feel comfortable. Because if you go to a workplace where every day you sweep floors and you don't talk to a soul, your English is not going to get better. If you go to the workplace every day and you stitch something together but you never talk to anybody, your English is not going to get better. So we have to look for those opportunities. We have a draft problem statement that's in your folders. And in a nutshell, it says, organizations do not realize that they have a limited English proficient community desiring and engaging in their services, to which you all say, nonsense. We have multilingual materials all over the place. So if you feel that maybe this is not a correct statement, then I would challenge you to say, do you know that you're addressing all of their needs? Or have you found all of that population? And the second piece of the draft statement says organizations do not recognize the talent and treasure that they possess within their organization and the value it can bring to their organization. And you say, nonsense, we have interpreters. We have a little list of people who speak these languages. And I say, but have you checked to see if you've got them all? Maybe there's somebody hiding. Maybe there's somebody who's shy. Maybe there's somebody who's afraid to come out because they might be recognized for being somebody who they are not currently aware. People don't know the famous story about people who pass as Filipino and then they find out they're Chukis in the DOE. People tell me that the students sometimes feel that they've been uncovered. So they may be hiding their language. The problem statement is a starting place. It's a starting place for conversations. We're going to hear some more stories from people who are working with our multilingual populations. And then we're going to start work on this draft problem statement to see where we can go with understanding who our populations are and also how we can make sure that we're using the resources within those populations, our workplace populations, to the best effect.